It's not who they are. In fact, they are abundant and they have all their needs met and they have more than they need.
Hello and welcome to the Pacific Channel, where you learn about the law of attraction, how to manifest anything you want, meditation, and more. In today's video, Dr. Joe Dispenza talks about two very important things. One of them is this concept about how creation works, and the other is about worthiness. But the first one is from the statement that he makes, which is, we create from the concept of lack. Now, what he means by that is that we create from the contrast that we experience in our lives, right? Without contrast, there would be no photograph. Without the contrast in your life, there would be no creation. So what does that really mean? What it means is that whenever you have a bad experience in life, you not only become more clear as to what it is that you do want, but also you shoot off these powerful rockets of desire out into the universe for what you want to come to you. Now, the only trick to it is that you can't stay in the old vibration. You can't stay in that old personal reality. You have to become a vibrational match to the new world, to the new person who you are, and a vibrational match to the things that you want, right? So I'm going to let Dr. Joe explain that a little bit more, and we'll talk about it too. But the other thing that he talks about is this concept of worthiness, right? What I really like about how Dr. Joe explains this is that most authors or most spiritual gurus would say worthiness is a feeling, right? How do you feel? Do you feel worthy of receiving what it is that you want from the universe? But Dr. Joe takes it a step further, and I think it's really good. And I think this might be the missing piece for you, and it might be the missing piece for even me, because I'm kind of excited about this because I had like an aha moment where I'm like, wow, this really makes sense. So what am I trying to say? Worthiness, according to Dr. Joe, is not, he doesn't really say it this way, but this is what I figured out, is not really just a feeling. It's an action. Okay, so I'm going to let him explain it to you, and then we'll come back and we'll discuss it more. But without further delay, let's listen to Dr. Joe.
In looking at some of the data from San Diego, and when you hear a scientist tell you that the data is mind-blowing, you know that something really exciting is happening. And we did the largest microbiome study that's ever been done. And of course, many of you know the microbiome, there's more cells in your body than that make up your body. So we're hosting living organisms in a sense, and they're hosting us in a sense as well. And so there's this symbiosis that takes place between the gut microorganisms in your body, because if you think about it, your digestive tract is actually an external part of your body. It's a tube that runs from one end to the other. And so there's got to be an interface, and then there's got to be some insulation, and there's got to be things that promote growth in those microorganisms or cause damage to the body. So we looked at close to 800 different samples, and I won't spill the beans, but I will tell you that, gosh, it answers so many questions about why our work produces some really profound changes in people's biology. It actually correlates really beautifully with what we're seeing in the testimonies of people around the world and what we're seeing in other scientific studies that we're doing around other health conditions. There's a very strong correlation. It tells such a wonderful story, and it gives people so much hope. So the San Diego event was an amazing week-long event, and the data that we collected prior to it from Marco Island, that's when we did the microbiome study, was really pointing the finger at possibilities. So we did our event in Denver this past weekend, our progressive workshop. What an amazing, amazing group of people that were so excited to learn and so excited to apply. And it was a memorable event for so many of us. So it's been a pretty good couple weeks. When we had Panama in between, we had a pretty international crowd there, and it was also an extremely memorable event. So I wanted to talk to you about this concept called worthiness. And it's such an important concept because one of the things that I learned in observing people during the process of personal change and transformation is that if they can truly get beyond themselves, their known self, and what do I mean by the known self? The known self is the self that you know that thinks certain ways and acts certain ways and feels certain ways about things and perceives, reality through that identity, right? So if a person shows up to the work, and they're showing up because they need a change in their health, or they want to have a mystical experience, or they want to produce a greater career or make more money or whatever it is, those are all healthy things to create for ourselves to have that experience. The thing is that, when you realize that you want those things, what you're realizing is that you're in lack or separation from having them. And this is where polarity and duality start the process of really creating. We create actually from the concept of lack. So it makes sense then that getting beyond yourself, if you want to be abundant, means you have to get beyond your lack. And that's the hard part for a lot of people, because they'll swear to you based on their past or what's going on in their present reality that they have every reason to feel that way. But that's just their memories of the past, right? So, and we all do this. And so to get beyond the known self is to get beyond that personality that's connected to the past or the present personal reality. So what I learned when people come to this work and they have taken the time in sincerity to sit down and watch progressive intensive workshops, they read the books, they come prepared, they really want to be there. They see the evidence in so many ways in people's testimonies and in our science that they want to be a part of it. So they come for a certain reason, and whatever that reason is, it's valid for them because they want to fulfill that lack. What happens though is people come up against themselves, and it happens to me, it happens to all of us. There is just some thought that you just can't seem to get beyond that's telling you to quit, or it's taking too long, or you don't know how to do it, or I'm not getting results I wanted, or all of those thoughts that the brain really exposes as programs if we truly want to get beyond ourselves. They come up. And so a lot of people give up on themselves, and they give up because they believe in that thought as being the truth. And then they can say that belief is actually reaffirmed. I can't meditate, or I can't create change, or whatever. That's how they perceive their world from that state of mind. So, but if they're truly invested in creating, say, abundance, they would have to begin to really look at how they act when they are feeling lack or the lack of whatever they want. And so if you take them past that point where they want to lay down, they want to get up and eat something, they want to check their cell phone, those are known behaviors that we do to really actually produce a feeling from our outer world. So here you are now, and you're wanting to get beyond your known self, and your identity that's connected to those habits and unconscious behaviors is actually telling you that you have so many things that you need to do instead of doing what you're actually doing in the moment. Now, this is where people give up on themselves. They stop their meditation, or they stop their process of personal change, and they default back to the old self, and they find people that actually act the same way, just so that they feel like it's okay to be where they're at, and they shrink back into mediocrity. But the person who actually sits through those impulsive habits is actually executing a level of energy, a level of will that's greater than that unconscious program, that unconscious habit. And that's a restraining process. But a person who actually goes a little further than that point where they want to lay down or give up or check their cell phone, then they are actually leaving the familiar self. And it's very uncomfortable. We've seen this so many times. That's because the person's not used to being out in the unknown without thinking that way or acting that way. And then the boundaries of our known is always those familiar feelings that we feel. So if we feel lack and our true desire is to be abundant, you can't bring lack with you, because if you really give it some thought, an abundant person doesn't feel lack. That doesn't occupy their consciousness. It's not who they are. In fact, they are abundant, and they have all their needs met, and they have more than they need, and they feel whole and relaxed in their life without feeling any lack. And so it would make sense then that if you were sitting in your meditation and your body is looking to reaffirm how it's been conditioned by you as the mind, and it wants to return back to lack, and it wants to return back to frustration and impatience or suffering, you would have to agree with me that a person who stayed there would stay as their own personality self. But in the work, when I watch people do this and they settle their body down past that frustration, past that insensible chatter that goes along with the emotions of lack, as they settle the body down emotionally, they stop thinking those thoughts. They're breaking or inhibiting the conditioning process. And wow, that takes such a tremendous amount of energy and awareness to not just get frustrated and quit, or feel really sorry for yourself and want to lay down, or whatever people do, or default to some old memories and go unconscious during the meditation, take a wrong turn, or overanalyze yourself in that process, within that emotion, think in the past. So by settling the body back down into the present moment and lowering the volume to that emotion, wow, that you're breaking or inhibiting the conditioning process. Just like Pavlov's dogs, after a period of time when they rang the bell and there was no food, they stopped salivating. The conditioning was over. And it takes that inhibition process. It's exactly what's happening. The stimulus is not producing the response, or the response is not activating the stimulus to produce the same response. So you're inhibiting that cycle. And I see people who actually sit through the fire of that agitation and that impatience and a lot of those emotions, and they're curious what's on the other side, or they really understand that they would have to master that if they wanted to be abundant, and that every time they did it, it was a victory, and they weren't failing, and they weren't feeling like they were doing it wrong. Then on some level, then the person who doesn't take the time to overcome themselves really doesn't feel worthy, because on some level they talk themselves out of the work, or they've talked themselves out of the act, or they talk themselves into a different belief that it's not possible. And they're still that same person, so they can make a date that they're going to do their meditation one day at 6 a.m, but when the alarm goes off and they hit snooze and they didn't do that meditation, I'm sure that by not doing it, they probably will feel less likely to do it the next day until something goes wrong. When we do that, I think we stay in that realm of really not being worthy, because a person who really was interested in overcoming themselves and they went past that point where they got beyond themselves, I think the antithesis happens. And it's happened to me so many times when I just thought it was just more than I can tolerate, just when I thought like this is way too much. I just kept doing that process a little bit further, and it was no longer about the abundance or whatever it is, the mystical experience for me, the mystical experience, when it was no longer about that. When it was just about me going through the steps without breaking my attention. And when my body wanted to lay down, I would just kind of go a little further, like, I'm going to do that one more time. I just want to see if I can do it a little smoother, a little easier without losing my attention. Because I go from the start to the finish without actually breaking my attention from the act. Well, when I finally got from one point to the other and I felt really good about it, I felt really worthy, I would always say to myself, God, that was so worth it. It was so worth that I went a little further. And I don't know if you keep saying that was so worth it, I think in time, you feel so worthy that you went a little further, that you overcame yourself, that you executed well, that you kind of relax and you feel worthy to receive. And I see this so many times when people in this community get together. And again, first couple days, they're disentangling from those programs and they're showing up a lot of times because everybody else is showing up. That's the enormous power in community. The flock is getting together, the herd is lining up, we're social creatures. Everybody's overcoming themselves, and a lot of times nobody is going to lay down because nobody else is laying down. And we're becoming those flocks of birds in schools.
I really like how Dr. Joe talks about worthiness here. Basically what he's saying is that it's an action. It's about taking action. It's committing to yourself. It's keeping your word to yourself. It's showing through your actions that you respect yourself, that you see yourself as worthy. In other words, you can say worthiness affirmations all day long, but it's not going to matter if you don't feel worthy, because the universe isn't listening to words you choose. It's listening to how you truly feel, your true vibration. So if you don't feel worthy, when that alarm goes off at 6 o'clock in the morning, when you've decided to meditate, you'll hit that snooze button. So this brings up a very important point, and the topic of habits. How do we develop the good habit of keeping our word to ourselves? The University of College London did a study, and they found that the average person takes 66 days to develop a good habit. 66 days, not 21, not 30, 66 days. So the problem for most of us is that we give up before we actually develop the habit. So the point is, don't give yourself lip service and only say that you are worthy. Don't just say affirmations. Decide, commit, and then prove it through your actions. And when you do this, when you do the work, when you stick to it, you prove to yourself and to the universe that you truly feel worthy. And when you get into the vibration of worthiness, that's when everything that you ever wanted will start to come to you in your life. If you like this video, please like and subscribe and share. And if you feel so inclined, please leave a comment below. And now go out there and prove to yourself that you are worthy. Have a great day or night.